Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as we do some flower bed cleanup. So let's go. We are on the south side of my house, and I like to call this flower bed my side walkway flower bed. I call it that because this flower bed is right next to my side walkway. In fact, we use this side walkway the most when it comes to entering and exiting the house. It's a fairly large space. When it comes to cleaning this flower bed, we're not going to be cleaning the whole entire flower bed. That would be just too much work. I was looking at it this morning, and there's definitely one area of this flower bed that has been bothering me for years. I tell myself that I'm going to tackle it each year, and I pick away at it little by little. But today I really want to go after this one area. And the area is, I would basically call it towards the back of this flower bed. We have the beautiful Joe Pye weed that's currently in bloom, and then we also have a beautiful miscanthus or ornamental grass that's towards the center back part of the bed. From this angle, you can see that we have two Joe Pye weed plants or groupings on either side of the ornamental grass. As you head down towards the base of the ornamental grass, there are a whole bunch of different plants tucked in here. They are jam-packed. They really don't do well in this area, and I'd like to start moving some of the plants out. It would be a lot of work, and it would not be realistic if I told myself I'm going to tackle this whole entire area today as part of this project. Instead, I'm going to try to stay focused on some select plants and what we're doing in here. The first thing that we're going to do, that we're going to tackle, is we're going to go after all of the yarrow that's in this space. And as we tackle each plant, I can talk a little bit about what I'm doing. So first, let's tackle the yarrow. You can see there's a big grouping of it right there. There's also some more yarrow tucked in right over here. The yarrow does not do well in here because it's always reaching for light. And that makes sense that it would reach for the light. There are just too many plants in this area. So what we're going to do is start digging out the yarrow. It is definitely tight in this whole area here, but we're going to get this job done. And I think that's a big reason why I have put off working in this area, is that in the spring, it's a nice open area. But by late summer, early fall, it is a super tight area. I can't get in here and I can't do what I really want to do. But today is the day we're going to tackle this area. It's just jam-packed with a whole bunch of different plants, and a lot of the plants either I don't love, or they're plants that just don't do well in this area because they don't get enough sun. This bed is considered a full sun bed. However, as you get closer to the house where you have some of these taller plants, the taller plants cast shade on the plants that are beneath them or at the base of them. And so that for that reason, certain plants just need to be moved out. I have a plant here and it's gone to seed. It's a type of perennial baby's breath. I don't love it at all. And I have to tell you, if you have a plant in your yard that you do not love, don't keep it. It's not worth it. So for right now, just to get it out of my way, because it is in my way while I'm working on the yarrow, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut back this baby's breath. And I'm just going to follow it all the way down to the base and I'm going to cut. One thing that I've learned about this baby's breath is that as soon as it goes to seed, I end up with a whole bunch more of this plant. Now, I love baby's breath, don't get me wrong, but I love the baby's breath that has little sprays of white flowers on it. They look beautiful in flower arrangements. Well, I have to share with you this particular baby's breath. I don't know where I got it from. I don't know what variety it is. It does not have beautiful little sprays of white flowers. It has white flowers on it, but they're not nice sprays of them. It's just a plant I don't love. When it comes to the yarrow, I'm also following each of the spent bloom stalks all the way down to the base. The plants are very, very leggy, so it doesn't make sense for me to be cutting them back by a half so that they can continue blooming for me. They are just very, very tall, very leggy, so I'm just going to follow them all the way down to the base and I'm going to cut. I have videos on my channel that show my process for collecting the seeds of yarrow. I also have videos that show how to divide yarrow, so I'll put links to those videos below. I have a small bucket here, and as I'm cutting back plants with my hand pruners, I'm cutting them in smaller pieces. All of this will get added to my compost pile. Smaller pieces break down faster when you put them in your compost pile. But if you don't want to cut them down, you can leave them as is, throw them in your compost pile. They'll eventually break down. The yarrow that's in here is a very pretty hot pink magenta color. I really love it. And one thing that I've learned with yarrow is not only does it need full sun, but if you also want to make it so it's not flopping, it's a good idea to keep cutting on it. Basically do the Chelsea chop or whatever you want to call it. You basically want to keep cutting it down so that it becomes a shorter, bushier plant. You don't want it to get too tall or leggy. Yarrow is great in a cut flower arrangement, and there are a lot of different colors. I have the native white colored yarrow that's down in my plant nursery. And when it comes to this very pretty pink colored one, my plan for it is I want to have it in my long border, which is very close to here. It's a full sun flower bed. And not only that, but it also has a whole bunch of different flowers in there that I think will help support my yarrow plant. It will keep it upright so I can really enjoy the blooms, because having these blooms just flopping like this, I didn't get to enjoy them. They were pretty, but they weren't as pretty as they could be if they were upright. Now, I'm not sure how many yarrow plants we're going to get out of here, but I know that the plant has spread over time. Yarrow does spread. I don't know if I would call it aggressively, but it does spread quickly. There was a time when I actually didn't like yarrow very much because of the way that it spread so quickly. But I've learned to enjoy and appreciate this plant, but not in this flower bed. And I'm just showing you just how messy this area has become. And what really should be such a pretty plant is just flopped right over. There are a whole bunch of other plants in here that I'm not even worrying about right now. I've learned that when I work on projects, I really want to just stay focused with what it is I'm trying to accomplish. And for right now, the main goal is to pull out all of the yarrow out of this bed. And for that reason, when it comes to this project that we're working on today, I really didn't set any other high expectation goals of what we're trying to do. I'm really just trying to start with the yarrow, and I want to see how many plants there are and how long it's going to take me to pull these out and get them transplanted. And like I mentioned, if we have too many plants that I don't need, I can always pot some up and I can add them down into what I call my plant nursery. It's basically a holding bed for plants, for myself as well as for plants that I'm selling to others. But look how long this is. It's a very tall piece, but it just was flopped right over, which is a shame. We might get a frost within the next month. So that's another reason why I am just cutting these all the way down to the bottom. If we still had a number of months left before a frost, I could probably cut these back by about a half, and they would put out more blooms for me. But at this point, I think it's very unlikely that they're going to put out any additional blooms if I cut them back by a half. So I would much rather just have them put their energy into root development. So what I'll do is I will finish cutting up all the yarrow that's in this immediate space, and we will go ahead and we will then start digging them out. As I was cutting the yarrow, I started thinking that I also have more yarrow on the other side of the rock here. So what I think would be more feasible would be to basically chunk this project and do one half of the side area. So in other words, maybe we just focus on this area right here and get it all cleaned up. And maybe that's all we do today. I'm not sure, to be honest with you, until I get in here and I start working. But rather than saying, I'm going to take all the yarrow out from here, I'm going to ignore all the noise that's here, and I will then continue taking yarrow from there. It's really hard for me to get into these tight spaces and work. So it makes more sense to say, okay, I know I want to do this whole entire section here. And it doesn't look very big, but it's tight and it's packed with lots of different plants. And I have different plans for different plants. Why not just tackle all the yarrow here, pull out weeds that I find along the way, and also pull out any other plants that I don't want and clean up this area. So let's start with digging out the yarrow over here, and then we'll see what's next. I say this a lot in my videos, but it is so easy to get overwhelmed in our gardens, which is why I've been making these videos lately, just showing you what am I doing in my garden and what is my thought process behind what I'm trying to do. How am I tackling certain garden chores? Because I want to show you that things change. You might have a plan for your chores in your garden, and then you start tackling a project and you realize, okay, that's not feasible. It's much bigger than I thought it would be. Or I want to change my idea from what I originally had set out to do. And I think as gardeners, we all go through that. I just brought a small little bucket here that I'm going to put all the yarrow plants in. The sun's not shining down in this area yet, so I can totally do that. I can just start collecting all my plants in here. I know realistically I don't need all of these plants. I'd love to jam pack them in my long border, but the long border right now, this time of year, is really packed with plants. So for me to get in there and get these all planted out there, it would be really a tight fit in there. So today what we're planning to do is we will plant some yarrow in that area, but we're definitely not going to plant all the yarrow. The thing with yarrow is it has roots where they just basically keep traveling beneath the soil level. They're very similar to, I'd say, a plant like bee balm. So even though I'm trying to do a great job when it comes to digging out as much of the root as possible, realistically, I might end up with more yarrow in this bed next year. My plan is to be on the lookout for that. So early in the spring, not late summer, early fall, early in the spring, as soon as I see more yarrow potentially popping up in this flower bed, I really need to just get after it. Right now, I'm just trying to pull it out because it literally has crawled everywhere in this flower bed. Again, I think it's pretty. I like it, but the minute you put it in a flower bed or a mixed border, it can just kind of travel everywhere. So for right now, I'm just taking all of this. I'm not going to worry about dividing it up, and I'm just going to place it right in here. And I'm just feeling around if there are any more roots. See, like right in here, I'm finding a section. It wasn't obvious, but there's the roots. This yarrow has really spread all in this area here and really all throughout this backside of this bed. So when it comes to a plant like this, you want to be on top of it. Some people might consider it kind of like a weed, the way it grows, but it's not. I mean, in my opinion, it's no different than any other plant that we have in our garden. You just have to stay on top of it if you don't want it to take over an area. But if you're looking for a low maintenance plant, then this probably isn't for you because it does like to root itself. Maybe you're growing it as a cut flower, then it might merit being in its own area, a big patch of yarrow all by itself. I'm okay with trying it out in the long border. But you know what? If I find out that I don't like it crawling everywhere, I can always take it out. I also have bee balm in the long border, and it crawls as well. And I've been able to stay on top of it. So I feel like having this in the long border will be manageable. But having it in this space where it's much tighter and where I'm trying to keep it a little more formal, a little more cleaner, it just is not a feasible plant to have out here. I have a lot more digging to do in this area. So we're going to stay focused. We're just going to stay in this area right here, no more. Once I've dug out all the yarrow, we can go ahead and start planting it out in the long border and also potting some of it up. I ended up with a whole ton of plants here. It's so important to deal with these plants before doing anything further. I don't want all these plants to just die on me. So that's the next thing we'll be handling. And again, when it comes to anything that I pulled out or cut back, that can all go in the compost pile. When it came to pulling out the yarrow, it looks so much better in this area. Next spring, I will have my eyes open and I'll be looking at this area very carefully. If I see any yarrow popping up, I need to pull it out immediately, because if I just let the whole season go by, what will happen is that yarrow will just spread again in this area, and I don't want that. And I have to tell you, I'm so glad that we changed our plan and we just started tackling half of this area, because I have my hands full right now when it comes to dealing with the yarrow that we just dug up. I did come in also, and if I saw any weeds, I pulled those out. But I tried to stay true to what we're trying to do here. I didn't do anything further, because we'll be dealing with these plants shortly. We'll be dealing with some of these plants shortly. And I also didn't worry about any of the plants on this side here. I also didn't worry about another plant that I want to dig up, which is Liatris, towards the back there. We have enough on our hands, so let's get busy with the yarrow that we just dug up. I'm in a nice shady area where I can tackle this job. I found a few more yarrow that had the long stems on them, so I'm just cutting those back. But I don't know how many yarrow plants I dug out. I dug out a lot of them. So I'm not going to need all of these. I don't want all of these. The way that they spread, it definitely can be a little bit of a bully plant, but I'm going to try. I'm going to try for 1, maybe 2 years, and I'm going to see what I think of them in the long border. You know, I said the same thing about bee balm. Bee balm can be a thug in the garden, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be very good about keeping the bee balm in check. I found that I've been very good about keeping it in check during the last few years. And I've found that I really love it. I love it in the flower bed. So that's why I want to give the yarrow a chance in that long border. I imagine you must feel the same way about a flower or some flowers in your garden. Maybe you have a love-hate relationship with the plant. I think with yarrow, I definitely have a love-hate relationship with it. But I also had a love-hate relationship with the bee balm, and now I just love it. Does my bee balm eventually get powdery mildew? Yeah, it does, but I don't care. It doesn't bother me any. I don't do anything to treat it. When it's blooming, it looks so pretty. The hummingbirds go crazy over it. So for many reasons, it's worth being in my garden or having a place in my garden. When you leave the side walkway bed, but you still stay on the south side of my house, you jump across the driveway. Here on the other side of the lawn is what I call my long border. And it's a full sun area, which I think would be a perfect place for the yarrow. So this is the long border, and it's quite narrow but very long. I'm going to give the yarrow a try in here. Again, if I don't love it after a year or two, I can always remove it. So the plan is just to plant a few sections throughout the border so that they are spread out. I think that would look really pretty. So I'm going to take you in for a closer look, and we're just going to plant 1 or 2 of them together. I do want to share that my husband mowed the lawn down very short, and then he overseeded this section of the lawn. Late summer, early fall is a great time to be doing a project like that. He also dethatched it. He's working on quite a few sections of the lawn. I've done it in past years, but he's tackling it this year. So for that reason, when it comes to working in my flower beds, I just have to be a little more careful, and I just need to step inside there, and I'm going to enter from here rather than trampling over my lawn. Here we are on the other side of the long border. It's definitely a tight squeeze or a tight fit when you're in here. So when it comes to showing you what I'm doing, I'm just going to show you how I plant 1 yarrow plant. But again, I'm sharing with you that I will be planting probably 1 plant or 2 plants right here because there's a little bit of an opening. And just keep in mind that even though it looks shaded, eventually the sun will be shining in here. Plus the plants will be able to support themselves with other plants that are around them. And if I find that I needed to move it a little bit in just so that there's more support, I can always do that as well. The key is getting some of the plants in here established, and then I can always move them a little more forward or a little more backward over time. So there's the top part of the plant. I just want to make sure that right here is above soil level, right there. But then the rest of this can be beneath soil level. So it would go something like that. And I just want to make sure that the plant is standing upright the best that it can. But if it flops, that's fine too. As long as the roots are beneath soil level, we'll be fine. When you're working in a flower bed that's as tightly squeezed as this one, it can get a little tricky. But what I'm learning is to work around what you have. I'm not even going to look up how tall does yarrow get, and based on the height, where should this yarrow be placed. And the reason is, in this area, again, things are just tightly packed in here. I just want the yarrow to take off, and I want to see what happens next year. When it comes up, when it blooms, does it need to go up there more? Does it need to come back here more? In fact, one of the things I'm hoping to do soon is I'm going to walk around certain flower beds, especially this one, and I'm going to make some notes of plants that need to be moved. Are there certain plants that are too short that should go more towards the front? Are there plants that are very tall that need to be more towards the back? And as long as I make notes, then I can always adjust the plants this year or even next year. I think what I'm going to do to start with is I'm going to plant 3 plants. They're going to be close to each other and let them take off. I can always add more plants and remove plants. Another thing I could potentially do is I could put 3 plants here, and this is considered, I would say, more towards the back of this flower bed. There's not a lot behind it in terms of supporting these plants. I could put another 3 plants up that way more. It's just in terms of filming, I can't really show you it very easily. So I think I will do that though. I'll do another 3 plants up that way more so that the plants are supported by the plants that are around them. But it really is just a matter of seeing what happens next year and how these plants do. For example, this plant right here is great blue lobelia, and I always thought that it needs to be supported by other plants around it. It clearly doesn't. It's totally fine. It's not flopping right over. It's happy as can be. So the yarrow placed right over here might end up being happy because it will get the sun as it grows taller. I got the yarrow planted. I mixed it up. Sometimes I had the yarrow towards the back of the bed. Other times I put it towards the center. And then other times it was more towards the front. It's going to be an experiment next year to see which area do I like it the best. I thought it makes sense to do it that way because sometimes you just don't know how a plant's going to look out in your landscape until you've had it out there for a season or two. So seeing that it's such a long space and seeing that we had so many plants to play with, I figured why not? We might as well switch it up and move it around different areas of the bed. And then next year we can decide where do we like the placement the best. Because that area is full sun, I suspect that the yarrow will do so much better than where we just dug it up from. Yes, the plants will be shaded by other plants around them, but they're all reaching for the sun. There's nothing really tall that's shading all those plants. So I think that the plants will just thrive and look so much better out in that area. The rest of the plants are getting potted up right now. So for potting up, I'm using pots that are recycled pots that I picked up for free from a local garden center. I'm also using soil that's recycled. It's either topsoil that I had from a raised bed in my backyard, so it's basically a mixture of soil and compost, but then it also has mixed in there some used potting mix, and I just mixed it all together so it's a nice, well-draining soil. And then I'm also using my garden marker and I'm labeling just so I know what these plants are and what color they are. I'm using plastic knives as my labels because plastic knives are hardly ever used at my house. So it's a great use of them when you end up with so many knives and you don't know what to do with them. They make for wonderful plant labels. I started this whole concept of basically a nursery for plants probably 3 years ago. I had been wanting one for a number of years. And the funny story is I didn't want it as a place for selling plants. I just needed a place to temporarily hold plants. I got the idea from my late mother-in-law. She had a small little nursery in her yard where whenever she divided a plant or if she bought a plant and she wasn't sure what to do with it, she would put it in this little area of her yard that she called her nursery. So I basically copied the idea or concept from her. I recommend that if you're in the same type of situation where you have plants that maybe you bought on the clearance rack and you don't know where to put them, or you have plants that you've dug up from your yard like we did today and you don't know where to put them. If you have a little area set out in your yard where you can just nurse plants to life or temporarily hold plants. I think that's just such a great idea. It doesn't need to be anything extensive or anything big. It can just be a small little section dedicated for that. So all I'm doing here is I do try to settle the soil when I remember to do it. It just makes it so you don't have any air gaps or air pockets in there. And then I'm making a little bit of a hole or indentation where the roots are going to go. With this root, I could cut off some of the root if it was too much, but this isn't horrible. Just know that if you need to root prune, you can totally do that with really any plant. You just don't want to take off all the roots. And I'm just trying to tuck in the roots. At that point, once the roots are tucked in, I can backfill. And I'm just pressing down. And then I can just go like this again if I want to settle the roots. And that's really it. It's that simple. I'm just going to keep on going because I have many that I need to pot up. And when I'm all done, I'm going to give these a drink of water. And speaking of a drink of water, I did not give the plants out in the long border a drink of water because those plants are set up on drip irrigation. So let me continue on with this process. I really should call this video, You Know You Have a Plant Problem When, or something like Confessions of a Real Gardener. I don't know, it doesn't really matter. It took me a number of hours to dig up, divide, and pot up all of the yarrow. But it totally was worth it. It really was, because I don't want to just throw the plant away. I could also give it to some family members and friends, but honestly, I either have friends that aren't gardeners, so it would be kind of a waste to give it to them. I have a family member that lives by and she already has this plant. Nevertheless, someone else can definitely use these plants, which is a big reason why I have a plant nursery, is so that I can sell the plants down in the nursery, but also as I work on other projects in my yard, I can quote unquote shop my nursery for plants that I took the time to divide and pot up. It's actually a great feeling to shop my own nursery. I really enjoy that. So let's go ahead and give these all a drink of water. So we ended up with 28 plants. And even though I say 28 plants, there were a couple of situations where I just doubled up because you get to a point where it's a lot of work potting each individual plant up. What will happen is these are going to get placed in shade for a couple of days just so they can recover, because they're going to be very sad and very mad right now. So if they're in shade, that they can just bounce back a little bit quicker. Then what I'll end up doing is bringing them out in the sun for a few days, continuing to keep them very well watered, and then eventually they'll head down to my backyard plant nursery. Some of these have very long leaves on them. I was lazy and I didn't cut them back. What I'm going to do is I'm going to monitor them. And if I notice they're pushing out new growth from the center, which they eventually should, at that point I can go ahead and cut back some of the bigger leaves. That way the plant is putting its energy into creating stronger roots and not supporting those big floppy leaves. Off to the shade they go for a few days. I am so glad we decided to chunk this project into halves, meaning only work on one half of this bed. Maybe that's all we do today. I think realistically, that's probably all we're going to do today. So since we did something that I felt was a little bit hard, a little bit time consuming, I am ready to do something simpler, a little bit easier. So the next plant we're going to work on is globe thistle, which is right here. But since we've been working hard all day, sometimes it's good to take a break. I'm going to take a break, but I'll meet you back here in what will be a blink of an eye for you. Okay, break time is over. The next plant we're going to tackle is right here. It's called globe thistle. It's a very beautiful plant. It's a perennial here where I live. And even though I love this plant, I don't love this plant in this area of my garden. I feel like it's hidden. And to be honest with you, one of my goals for cleaning up the space in this area here is I want to have it as much of a blank slate as possible so I can start over and really think hard about what plants I want to place here. The other thing I want to share is I have some peonies that are already in this flower bed. I don't love the placement of the peonies. So in an effort to move some peonies basically where I'm sitting, I need to remove plants from this area. So let's go ahead and dig out the globe thistle. So when it comes to globe thistle does have a deep taproot. Could I, at this time of year, go ahead and cut this plant back so that the plant puts its energy into the roots? Absolutely. However, I am planning to collect the seeds from my globe thistle plant. So for that reason, I don't want to cut it back. I want to leave the flower on the plant so that then the plant can go to seed and then I can collect the seeds from it. So I'm just pushing aside the mulch from the base of the plant. I'm just going to use my hand shovel to do the digging. If I had a very large established patch of globe thistle, I would probably use a larger shovel, but I should be able to just use a small hand shovel, no problem. There is a seedling here, and it took me a while to really know what the seedling of a globe thistle looks like. When it's very small, it can be confusing. So I'm excited I have a seedling here. I'm not going to dig right at the base of the plant. I'm going to dig just a little bit away from the plant. So I'm going to dig down and then over. And the reason is I want to get as much of that root as possible. The reality is the root could break while I'm trying to dig out the plant, and the plant would be fine. It's not like the plant would die if I did break part of the root off. And as I'm digging, I'm noticing it looks like I have 2 seedlings here, which is even more exciting. So we'll just put that in our box. And this one as well. It looks like while we were digging the globe thistle, I found yet more yarrow. It's inevitable. We are going to continue finding it in this bed. So I'm just going to dig it out while I see it. And one more piece of yarrow. My channel has a lot of videos that are related to the plants that we're talking about today. So for example, for yarrow, I know I have videos on how to divide yarrow, how to collect the seeds of yarrow. So you can find those in the description. But even with globe thistle, I also have videos on how to collect the seeds of globe thistle as well as how to divide it. I'll also put links to those videos down in the description because I don't want to spend my time in today's video showing you that whole process again, since I've already shown it in previous videos. But at least you can look for those videos in the description in case you're looking to do any of those things in terms of seed collecting or dividing. And I'm just going to remove some of these crispy bottom leaves to clean up the plant. I could definitely have potted this plant up in a much larger pot, but it should be fine for this season. And for the other globe thistle that I mentioned, oh, it looked like we could divide it. I looked at it a little carefully down at the base here. And yes, this probably, I could cut it off and it would be its own plant. I don't see enough roots at the base that I want to take a chance with that. I would much rather plant this in one pot, and by next year, this will have more roots on the base and I can go ahead and cut it at that time to turn it into 2 plants. I tell you, when it comes to globe thistle, it took me a number of years to figure out where the seeds were. The seed pods are very obvious. The seeds are not as obvious. It's funny how plants are. Some plants, it's very easy to find the seeds. Other plants, it's a little trickier. And I found with the globe thistle, it was definitely trickier to find its seeds, but I'm glad I was able to find them. I'm all about propagating plants just to increase my stock in plants. I'm sure I'm going to continue finding the roots of yarrow. I'm starting to get a little lazy and I'm just putting a whole bunch of roots in a larger size pot. And then I can go ahead and give these 3 pots a drink of water. The yarrow that we just dug out did not have really any leaves on the top of it, but it's totally fine. The roots are under there and the plant will just start emerging when it's ready from the soil. We're going to keep rocking and rolling over here because we're on a roll. We have some great blue lobelia that looks a little sad, but it's still alive. Now, if that plant goes to seed, I would have a gazillion little seedlings all over the place here. Maybe not a gazillion, but I would have a lot. So I want to take this plant out of this flower bed because I have a whole bunch of it in the long border. Now, when it comes to the globe thistle we just dug up, I want to add that to the long border, but actually I'm going to wait a little while. I want the plant to recover because it had so much top growth on it, it would flop. It's going to be about 80 degrees Fahrenheit today. I want to just wait when it comes to that plant. But with the great blue lobelia, I have a ton of this plant. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to pot this up. Now, I've sold a bunch of it in my plant nursery this year, and I don't want it to go to seed anyway. We're going to go ahead and we're going to cut off the top growth. We just want the plant to put its energy into the roots. And there is another great blue lobelia plant over here. We're going to go after that. I'm looking around to see if there's any more, and I'm not noticing any more. Let's go ahead and start digging. Great blue lobelia is a great plant to have for late summer, early fall color. And in fact, it is a favorite of the pollinators. It's very beautiful. I love its color. But I have a lot of this plant in my landscape, so it makes sense for me to dig it up, pot it up, and place it down in my plant nursery. Check out the description below. I'm sure I have videos on how to collect the seed of great blue lobelia. I may have videos on how to propagate it using winter sowing. I'm not quite sure. But it's also a great plant that you can sow the seeds of very easily. Once you've been gardening for a while, you get to know what the seedlings of plants look like. This right here is a seedling for great blue lobelia, so we're going to dig that out as well. We might as well, since we're going after all the great blue lobelia plants right now. And that's a close-up of what the great blue lobelia seedling looks like, in case you have the plant in your yard and you want to identify what the seedlings look like. And that's what the roots look like at the base. We have another great blue lobelia plant over here. And I'm also noticing at the base of this peony plant right here is a globe thistle seedling. So we will dig that up as well. Many of you have mentioned to me that you have a hard time finding out or identifying what the seedlings of plants look like. Let me know in the comments if you would like me to start making a series of videos on how to identify the seedlings of different plants. So we're going to come right in here and carefully dig out that globe thistle seedling. It's a little tricky because it's intermingled with the peony here, but I was able to get some of the roots. That's what the seedling looks like of globe thistle. And as long as you have some roots, you should be fine. This is the problem I run into when I weed my flower beds or when I'm gardening. Each seedling deserves to live. We have another seedling of great blue lobelia. It might not bloom for us for 1 or 2 years, but it deserves to live. One thing I'm going to do very quickly is I'm just going to go ahead and do some weeding in this area, just because I might as well. I see weeds, they're apparent, so they might as well come out. If you were working on a flower bed and you were like, yeah, this is way too overwhelming to dig up and pot up these plants or these seedlings, or this is way too overwhelming to dig up and move every single plant or every single seedling, that's okay. Just because you want to take those plants and throw them away, or you want to take those plants and donate them or give them away for free, or if you want to take those plants and sell them, it really doesn't matter what you do. The main thing is you're out in your garden, you're enjoying nature, you're setting plans for next year or for this year. We all garden differently. We all live in different areas. So I always say to my videos, there's really no right way to garden. Do whatever makes you happy. What makes me happy is to save seedlings, but there are days when I'm like, yeah, no, it's not happening, and I chuck them because we only have so much time, we only have so much energy. And I wanted to share that because it took me a long time this morning, probably too much time, to pot up all those seedlings of the yarrow. I'm glad I did it. I think they're going to be a very good seller in my plant nursery. I also have an area on the north side of my house that I'm working on that's full sun, and I think the yarrow might look nice there, but I'm not ready to plant it out there. So I am glad that I dug all those yarrow up, even though it took me a good chunk of my morning. For this great blue lobelia, I am just going to plant a whole bunch of them in this one pot. And again, I'm just going to take off any of the top growth here. because I just want the plant at this point to put its energy into the roots. I'm not looking to sell it for its flowers. I'm not looking for the plant to create any sort of seeds for me because I have plenty of the plant all over my yard. One thing today's video taught me, well, it taught me a bunch of things that I wanted to share with you and that it taught myself even. But one big thing that it taught me was it's okay to not have a plan when you start some sort of a planting project or really any project in your garden. Maybe it just happens over time. Maybe you have a general idea of what you want to do. My general idea was I want to empty out almost all those plants in that area. But I also knew that it's not going to happen today. We're going to start it. We're not going to finish it. And I also thought that I was going to start with my plan of digging out all of that yarrow first, but then we quickly changed it because that wasn't easy or realistic. And I also didn't share with you at the beginning of the video which plants we were going to tackle and what were we going to do. Were we going to pot up plants? Were we going to move plants? Were we going to divide plants? Sometimes it's okay to not have a full plan and just to go with it. At the end of the day, I'm going to feel very happy with everything that we accomplished together. And then there's always tomorrow or the day after or next week, whenever I get to it, to finish that project. The key for me is to finish that project within the next few weeks because I want to make sure that the plants have enough time to root themselves before the cold weather sets in. We strategically started with something that was pretty hard and time consuming, but then we shifted gears and we did a couple of small, easy plants that gave me, I don't know, it just got me excited to keep on going. And now I'm ready to tackle something bigger. The bigger thing is right over here, and it's called Liatris, Blazing Star, Gay Feather. It has a bunch of different names, and it comes in two colors. You'll often find it in purple, but you'll also find it in white. Sometime earlier in the summer, we planted a bunch of the purple ones out in my long border. I also want to have the white one in the long border. The long border is just so pretty. It's so long. It has a mixture of all different flowers in there. And I love populating it with plants from my own yard. This Liatris only put out, I don't even know if it put out a bloom this year, to be honest with you. I think, number one, it's not getting enough sun because it's being shaded by everything around it. And also, I think that what was happening is it needs to be divided. So we're going to go ahead and dig it up. Normally, I would use a large shovel, and I may end up having to use a large shovel. But the thing is, I have drip irrigation all throughout this bed, and I don't want to deal with, by mistake, cutting into the irrigation. So I'm going to first start with trying to dig it up with the small hand shovel. Will it take me longer? Absolutely, but it's okay. We're going to try. And if I'm struggling, then I can go ahead and use the large shovel, and I'll just have to find where the irrigation line is. So upon further investigation, it looks like it put out two blooms. I can see one down in this area over here, and I can see one up in that area over there. But it doesn't matter. The big thing is I want this moved today, so let's get going. There are definitely certain angles in my yard where the camera can be tricky for me to show you what I'm doing. But big thing is I'm just removing any mulch from the base of the plant. I'm using my small hand shovel. We're going to try it. And I don't want to be right at the base. I want to be out a little bit from the plant. So I'm going to dig down and then over. And fortunately, the roots are not very deep, which made that so much easier to pop out. I don't necessarily want to take all this soil with me because then I would have to replace it. Otherwise, I'd end up with a big hole here. So I'm just taking off some of the soil. And I'm also noticing little baby Liatris seedlings all around. Fortunately, they're not everywhere, but they are around. This is a plant that's quite popular to have in the plant nursery. In fact, a lot of people have the purple one. They don't have the white one. So why would I want to throw away or get rid of all the white Liatris seedlings? It makes sense for me to dig them up and pot those up. And I'm pulling this, and just by pulling it, it's falling apart, which is great because it's basically dividing itself for us. Now we can just clean up our mess. So that wasn't bad at all in terms of digging that up. I'm sure I will find more little baby seedlings here at the base of the plant next year. And again, in the spring, I'm just going to be on the lookout for anything that I want to pull out, and I'll get right after it in the spring. Here's an example of little Liatris seedlings. So they look like little blades of grass. So if you're weeding around them, you might think that they're grass. But look at the base. They have like little bulbs. That's basically what Liatris is. And off the bulbs are the roots. So when you see those little round bulbs on these grass blades, it's not grass. It's just Liatris seedlings. Liatris will almost always just fall apart when you dig it up. But if it doesn't, you can always take your large shovel, or you could take a hand pruning saw. You could use something like a reciprocating saw, and you could cut right down the middle of your plant, because not everyone wants to dig up the whole entire clump. You might have a huge clump of Liatris. So there are so many different ways that you can accomplish the same task, which is dividing a piece off of it. I showed you just how to dig it up, and it fell apart on its own. But even then, I'm going to have to pull it apart a little bit so that each section fits into here. Now, I'm not going to just put one plant per pot. I'm going to definitely put a small handful of plants inside of each pot because I want it to be a nice clump. Most perennials benefit from being divided every 3 to 5 years. It not only gives you free plants, but it's also healthier for your plant. So if you notice a certain plant is not blooming for you, it could be for a lot of different reasons. It could be because of the light conditions or the water conditions, or maybe it needs fertilizer. But sometimes it could be something as simple as it just needs to be divided. You'll often see that with plants like daffodils, iris, but even Liatris, so many other plants that if you don't divide them every 3 to 5 years, you might still get a bloom or two, but you might not get as many blooms as you possibly could had you divided the plant. So for planting depth inside of the pot, I just want to make sure that the bulbs and the roots are probably about halfway in the pot here. I want this to be able to be sturdy and standing up straight, and then I can go ahead and backfill. I debated about should I show you my process for planting these out in the landscape. But at that point, I would just be doing it just to show you it in a video. Honestly, I'm not ready to put them out in the long border yet. I want to think a little bit more about it. And I might need until next spring, to be honest with you. It's just very heavily packed in that area. A lot of plants have dropped their seeds, and I really need to go in there and just clean it up. But these plants aren't going anywhere. I'll have them ready to go, and then next spring, or maybe in a few more weeks, it depends, whenever I'm ready, we can shop my plant nursery and we can go and get the white Liatris, which I'm so excited about having in the long border. Sometimes you'll see me cutting off the tops of the plant. Sometimes you'll see me leaving them on there. There is no rule that says you have to do it one way or the other. These plants will definitely be sad because there's just so much top growth. For right now, I'm leaving it on there. Once I see that the plant is pushing out new growth from the base, then I can go ahead and cut off some of the top growth. I'm not that familiar with this plant. I'm not sure if it's going to push out new growth from the base. So I'm worried that if I cut it back, will there be enough there to photosynthesize and feed the bulbs? I think there should be, because there would still be green up here. But for right now, I'm just going to leave this top growth on here. Also, I definitely want to keep the flowers on here, or I should say the spent flowers on here, because I want to collect the seeds off of the plant. But yes, I would say generally, especially when you're doing a job like this in the late summer, early fall, you typically do want to just cut back all the top growth. Not all of it, but probably about, I'd say 50% of it, or somewhere in that ballpark. Just you want to leave enough there so the plant is putting its energy into the roots, and so that it has green growth so that it can photosynthesize and still feed the plant. But like I said, part of the reason I'm not doing it is, well, I've been out here all day, and I'll share with you the right practice or the correct way to do it, but I don't want to do it right now. I might do it tomorrow or the day after. For these little itty bitty plants, the Liatris seedlings, I'm just making a little hole and I'm tucking in the seedlings. I'm spacing them out just so they can put on some growth, because they're probably going to be down in my plant nursery for some time. And I still have room in here for a lot more seedlings that I can place in here. But at least we've gotten this started, so we can just keep tucking them in here. Facebook Marketplace is a great place to look for free or cheap plants. In fact, once on Marketplace, there was a nice lady that I found that wanted help with thinning out her flower beds. And she said that if anyone wants to come and take a piece of this and a piece of that, they could have the plants for free. Myself, as well as a handful of others, helped ourselves to the plants. In fact, that's where the purple Liatris that I have in my yard came from. So definitely check out the Facebook Marketplace groups as well as the advertisements for free or pretty cheap plants. Just be safe whenever you meet anyone on Facebook Marketplace. Well, I would say not too shabby. We managed to fill up my whole cart with plants. And these are plants that are waiting for a new home, be it somewhere else in my yard or someone else's yard. Did we complete this project? Well, do we ever really complete projects when it comes to gardening? I think that's what makes gardening so fun, is that it's a never-ending big project. But we got a lot done today. So outside of this video, what am I going to do? I'm going to come in and I'm going to pull out any more. They're not grass, they're Liatris seedlings, and I'm going to continue potting them up. I also have yet another globe thistle seedling that I need to pot up. There is also coneflower seedlings in here. So if you're not sure what a coneflower seedling looks like, that's what that looks like. So I will continue doing that. I have weeds that need to get pulled. And then if we swing over towards the rock, here is more yarrow that needs to come out. And then there's more of the baby's breath that needs to come out. And we haven't taken out any of the baby's breath yet, so that will be a whole other thing. It has quite the extensive root system to it. And if you peek around the corner, there's still so much to be done, but I'm just not going to allow myself to get overwhelmed because I am thankful and happy for what we got done today. Remember to celebrate small victories in the garden. I know I'm ready to celebrate. I'm very, very happy with what we got done today. There's still a lot to be done, but you know, there's always tomorrow. And now I have an open area where I can keep going forward and keep moving along with digging, dividing, moving. And what I'm really excited about is the peony plants that are in there. I did not like the placement of them. I didn't like it at all. I want to keep some peony plants in there, but I actually want to bring them forward. Basically, in that area where we dug up all of the yarrow, I want to put a peony plant there. So I want to move it out a little bit. It was tucked in too close to where that grass is. You really couldn't even notice it. So just by pulling it out a little bit, I think will be nice. So we accomplished a big thing by clearing up all that area. And as it is, it's a great time for me to be digging and moving peony plants. And I've shown that in previous videos. So when I move that peony plant, I probably won't film it. I'll also put a link down in the description below, though, in case you're interested in how to divide or how to move a peony plant. But more than anything, I really hope that this video encourages you, motivates you in some way, gives you some ideas on how to take a big project and how to chunk it into smaller projects. And then to celebrate after you've completed one part of a very big project. That space is not big at all, but it's a lot of work. If I wanted to, I could absolutely just go and dig up everything and throw it in the compost pile and call it done. And there's nothing wrong with that if you want to do that. We all garden differently. We all have different ways of accomplishing the same task, which in the end is cleaning out a space or moving plants around. But let me know in the comments below in this video, what was your most favorite part, or what did you walk away with? Was there something that inspired you to want to do in your own garden? I'd love to know. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.